Chapter 671. Marlon. When Marlon knelt on the ground, his lackeys all seemed aggrieved. Although Kylus was very strong, if they all fought him together, they would have a shot at winning. They couldn't understand why their leader would kneel in front of everyone. If this incident got out, their reputation would be done for. Don't let me see you all again. Get lost. Kylus snorted coldly. Let's go. Marlon said nothing more and immediately fled with his lackeys. He didn't dare stay a second longer. Amazing. What an amazing fight. As expected of the senior disciple of the invincible guardians. He's truly impressive. In less than 10 moves, he defeated Marlon the hoodlum. It's truly admirable. All the martial artists in the hall began to clap and cheer. Marlon had a notorious reputation. After seeing him pick on women today, they were furious at him. It was just that none of them dared to fight him due to his strength. Now that Kylus had taken down Marlon the hoodlum, they rejoiced and praised him. Did you see that? That's how strong Kylus is. Now do you still dare question him? Ivy raised her head pridefully. She had felt a little unhappy because of Abigail's doubt earlier. Ms. Natasha, when you were in danger, Dustin didn't so much as say a word. Yet, Kylus stood up for you and defeated your harasser. I think it's clear who is better. Maria turned around to look at Natasha. She sounded a little proud. HMPH, what's so impressive about that? Dustin is not any weaker than your senior disciple. Ruth said indignantly. She had witnessed Dustin defeat Terry with her own eyes during the fight with the Doyle family. Kylus's skills were far from average, but there was still a gap between him and Terry. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to beat Dustin, either. Hey, if he's really that strong, then he wouldn't have shrunken back into his shell earlier. Maria snickered coldly. Exactly. In the face of danger, he'd actually let a woman stand in front of him. He's a worthless excuse for a man. Ivy sneered. You. Ruth was suddenly at a loss for words. She turned around and said huffily, Dustin, say something. What's there to say? It's meaningless to fight over this. Dustin shrugged. HMPH, if you don't have the chops, then just say so. There's no need to sound so high and mighty. What a joke. Kylus leaned over, not forgetting to make a snide remark. Sure. Dustin said indifferently. He didn't bother to give a real response. It seems like you now know the gap between us. It's like heaven and earth, Kylus said pridefully. Sure. Ms. Natasha is well respected and noble. Someone like you shouldn't try to ride on her coattails. If you know better, you should stay away from her. Sure. Only a god among men like me is worthy of Ms. Natasha. Sure. Hey, can you respond with something else? Kylus was starting to get irritated. Fuck. After all that, all he could say was, sure. No one could stand that. Sure. Dustin said. He opened his mouth wide and increased his volume. You fucking. Kylus flew into a rage. Just as he was about to blow up, the door was kicked open with a bang. Immediately after, a group of mysterious masked men walked in, led by a tall man in a cloak. As soon as he entered, he removed his mask to reveal a sinister face. He was completely bald, no hair, eyebrows, or facial hair. His complexion was deathly pale, his lips were purplish, and his cheeks were sunken. Even more strangely, his eyes were blood red. He looked as scary as a ghost. Hey, I didn't expect the Harmon family to invite a ragtag bunch of trash. How disappointing. The pale man swept his gaze over his surroundings. He laughed coldly. Who the fuck are you? How dare you act so atrociously here? A burly man in the crowd shouted angrily. The pale man tilted his head and turned to the burly man. He reached out to grab the air in front of him. Chapter 672. The burly man's expression changed drastically. His body began involuntarily moving toward the pale man at high speed, as if there was an invisible rope pulling him forward. All his struggles were in vain. Finally, his throat ended up in the pale man's grasp. You. The burly man was terrified. He opened his mouth, but before he could get a word out, the pale man clenched his fist. There was a crack. The burly man's head fell to the side, and he died instantly. Ah! Everyone was horrified by the gruesome sight. The pale man had simply grabbed a man and killed him. That move was frankly frightening. Don't panic, everyone. With Kylus here, no one would dare act out of line. Maria said, trying to calm everyone down. What unorthodox magic is this? How dare you act so boldly here? Kylus took 2 steps forward. His gaze was sharp and aggressive. The sword on his back began to vibrate slightly, as if ready to spring free from its sheath at any moment. I am the senior disciple of the Dark Lord, Grey Gull. The pale man tossed the burly man's corpse aside. Grey Gull. It's bloody-eyed Grey Gull. Everyone was scared senseless. Bloody-eyed Grey Gull was infamous in the martial world. He specialized in killing and robbing, often using cruel methods. If he appeared, then things usually ended in complete annihilation. Back then, several upstanding martial arts tried to organize ambushes several times to eliminate this scourge. All of them ended in failure. Afterward, all those involved in the ambush would receive revenge. They were hunted to the ends of the earth and died gruesome deaths. No one dared to ambush Grey Gull ever since. Grey Gull had also vanished for some time. However, no one expected him to turn up there. He's finally here. Natasha narrowed her eyes. After 3 days on high alert, the Dark Lord finally attacked. So what if that's bloody-eyed Grey Gull? He's just a wayward martial artist. What's the worst he could do? Kylus said coldly. That's right. We have power in numbers, and with Kylus here, what do we have to fear? The martial artists pulled out their weapons, ready to strike. After all, the Harmon family had invited them there to ambush the Dark Lord and his minions. Since they'd taken the money, they had to do the work. Hey, it's nothing but an overly ambitious effort. Grey Gull smirked coldly. Today, all of you here will die. How wildly arrogant. Watch me cut your head off. Kylus pulled out his sword and swung it in Grey Gull's direction. The force of this attack was terrifying. His sword was unstoppable, like a sun ray penetrating the sky. What a strike. That's the senior disciple of the invincible guardians for you. Once Kylus attacks, even Grey Gull would die an untimely death. Everyone let out gasps of surprise. Dustin, that move was the result of 20 years of training. Could you fend against that? Ivy gloated while looking at Dustin. Natasha, watch closely. Once Kylus eliminates Grey Gull, you'll finally understand who's the god among men. Maria said, arrogantly. As soon as Maria finished speaking, Grey Gull finally made a move. In the face of Kylus's sharp attack, he didn't try to dodge. Instead, he threw a punch head-on. His fist hit the point of the sword with a terrifying force. There was a loud blast. The moment they came in contact with each other, Kylus's sword was instantly obliterated. It exploded into pieces. At the same time, Grey Gull's iron fist continued with its momentum and slammed into Kylus's chest. Kylus grunted. It was as if he'd been hit by a truck. He was sent flying almost 50 feet before crashing heavily into the floor, spewing blood everywhere. In an instant, everyone fell deathly silent. Chapter 673. When everyone saw that Kylus had gotten sent flying from a punch, they were stunned. This was none other than the senior disciple of the Invincible Guardians, a highly powerful martial arts genius. The same person who defeated Marlon the Hoodlum with just a few moves. However, Grey Gull defeated a strong warrior like him with a single punch. It was unthinkable. How could this be? Kylus lost. Who would have thought that Grey Gull would be said to be formidable? He defeated the senior disciple of the Invincible Guardians in one move. That's horrifying. Shit. If even Kylus is no match for Grey Gull, would any of us be able to hold against him? Right now, everyone was shocked and afraid. They all began to back out. Kylus was already extremely strong, but Grey Gull was even more terrifying. More importantly, he wasn't alone. He had so many lackeys, and none of them was ordinary. There was no way around sheer force in numbers. Ivy's and Maria's snapped out of the daze, and their expressions changed. Kylus. They helped the injured Kylus to his feet. Then, they fed him a healing tablet. This bastard is too strong. Hurry. Contact our master. Kylus wobbled shakily on his feet. He pressed a hand against his chest, his face full of terror. Grey Ghoul's punch had completely obliterated him. He wasn't able to fend it off at all. The power gap between them was far too wide. Right now, the only way to subdue him was if his master and his master's colleague stepped in. The senior disciple of the Invincible Guardians is nothing. Since you have the courage to step forward, then you should die. After that punch, Grey Ghoul had gotten the upper hand. Unforgivingly, he threw another punch into the air. There was a loud whoosh. The huge burst of true energy transformed into a giant shadow fist, flying straight at Kylus. Kylus, move. Maria and Ivy pushed Kylus aside. Then, they raised their swords against the shadow fist. A loud blast erupted. The two women's swords broke, and they flew backward. They were severely injured and coughing up blood. They couldn't even withstand one attack. Maria. Ivy. Kylus's expression changed. He was enraged. However, he was not powerful enough. He was helpless. What a close relationship between guild members. Grey Ghoul grinned. He loved seeing these upright martial artists put up a last fight. Grey Ghoul, I'm warning you, don't do anything crazy. Kylus yelled sharply. We are from the Invincible Guardians. If you dare lay a hand on us, you will incur the wrath of the entire Invincible Guardians. There are a lot of people who want to kill me. Adding the Invincible Guardians wouldn't make a difference, Grey Ghoul said. He showed no fear. I know you're very powerful, but listen, my master is coming. Leave now, and you may be able to avoid trouble. Otherwise, once my master gets here, you'll all be dead. Kylus threatened. Hey, by the time the leader of the Invincible Guardians makes it here, you'll already be dead. Grey Ghoul laughed coldly. He beckoned with his hand. My dear disciples, hurry and slaughter every last person here. We still have more important matters to attend to. Yes. The group of masked killers dressed in black pulled out the blades. Then, they charged forward like a swarm of bees, prepared to wreak havoc. At that moment, there was the glint of a sword blade. The few masked killers at the very front couldn't dodge in time. Their heads were chopped off, causing blood to spew everywhere. Shocked, the others came to a stop. They surveyed their surroundings vigilantly. That slash just now was so fast to the point they couldn't even react. Who did that? Who was that attacking from the shadows? Grey Ghoul's face darkened. He swept his gaze left and right. It was me. Dustin stepped out from the crowd, wielding a broken sword. Chapter 674. Instantly, everyone turned to look. How dare you kill Nightshade's disciples? Grey Ghoul glared at Dustin. If you stop now, I'll let you die in one piece, Dustin replied. His calm words ticked everyone off. Who the fuck does he think he is? Does he have a death wish? How could he openly challenge Grey Ghoul? He's just an idiot trying to show off. The martial artist sneered at Dustin disdainfully. Grey Ghoul was notorious for being so strong that even Invincible Guardians was no match for him. So, where did nobody like Dustin find the balls to challenge that man? You better not act tough, Dustin. Even Kylus lost to him. What makes you think you have a winning chance? Ivy jeered. She's right. Your skills are pathetic. Maria echoed. Just because he lost doesn't mean I will. Piss off. Dustin snorted. What? His words irked Kylus. Who the fuck do you think you are, Rhys? How dare you look down on me? I might have lost to Grey Ghoul, but I can still beat you. Oh. Shut up. You can't even stand right now. Dustin retorted without turning around. Kylus gritted his teeth. If he hadn't been severely injured, he'd already be setting Dustin straight by now. We're only trying to warn you. If you don't listen, you'll have to face the consequences. Ivy frowned. HMPH. Stubborn bastards like him won't listen. Let him die. Kylus snarled. He couldn't wait for Grey Ghoul to kill Dustin. You'll let us die in one piece. Surprised, Grey Ghoul laughed. It's been a while since someone spoke to me like this. Do you even know who I am? It doesn't matter. You only have two choices right now. You either give in or die, Dustin stated coolly. Insolent fool. It's time for you to die. Grey Ghoul was finally angry. He drew his sword and brought it down heavily on Dustin's head. There was a loud hum as a violent light burst forth from the blade. It tore through the room and shook the furniture. The onlookers' hearts stopped out of fear. My, what a ferocious attack. Is this Grey Ghoul's real strength? How terrifying. No one would be able to withstand that attack. The martial artists in the room were frightened by the strength of Grey Ghoul's attack. Weren't you dying to show off? Let's see what happens now. Kylus sneered. Shit. Ivy and Maria sighed silently. Even Natasha and the others began to fear for Dustin's safety. Just then, Dustin made his move. With a flick of his wrist, a beam burst forth from his sword. It pushed past Grey Ghoul's attack and split his blade in half before piercing his body in one fluid motion. Ah! Grey Ghoul's body stiffened before his head rolled off his shoulders. It landed on the ground with a thud, smearing blood all over. The commotion stunned the crowd into silence. Chapter 675. The entire hall had gone silent as everyone gaped at Grey Ghoul's head in disbelief. It all happened so fast that they didn't have time to process everything. No one expected Dustin to kill the invincible Grey Ghoul in mere seconds and with just a single strike. Is this for real? He killed Grey Ghoul. He ended Grey Ghoul with one strike. Who is this monster? What terrifying sword skills he has. Since when did someone like him exist? After finally realizing what had happened, the crowd burst into whispers. Gazes of shock, dismay, and disbelief were shot toward Dustin. They thought it was the end for Dustin when they saw Grey Ghoul swinging his sword at him. But not only did Dustin survive, he even defeated Grey Ghoul effortlessly. How terrifying. They also realized that the choices Dustin had so proudly laid out earlier had come true. I am possible. How is that guy so strong? Kylus's eyes widened in disbelief. He always viewed Dustin as a weak nobody who was no match for the notorious Grey Ghoul. Who knew that he's actually so strong? Ivy and Maria exchanged shocked looks. Even Kylus had lost to Grey Ghoul. If Dustin could cut Grey Ghoul down with a single strike, didn't that mean he was more powerful than Kylus? The two ladies couldn't help feeling embarrassed for their rude words earlier. They never thought they'd be looking down on someone far stronger than them. I knew he was powerful. Abigail jumped excitedly. He's awesome. Ruth's eyes twinkled, just as in awe of the man as Abigail was. That's my man. Natasha smirked proudly. She'd been worried when she saw Grey Ghoul's attack. Fortunately, Dustin was strong enough to come out of it unscathed. After a few seconds, Grey Ghoul's decapitated body gradually toppled to the floor with a thud. It caused a cloud of dust to rise into the air. Grey Ghoul! The group of masked killers exclaimed furiously. They never imagined that this invincible man would meet his demise so suddenly. How dare you kill him? You're dead meat. Everyone, we shall wipe out the Harmon family to avenge Grey Ghoul. Battle cries echoed as each of the masked killers fished out a black ball and smashed it into the ground. One by one, the balls burst apart on impact, and black fog wafted into the air. Watch out for the poison. One of the martial artists cried out. Everyone else immediately paled. They covered their mouths and noses frightfully. Natasha, lead everyone out of here. I'll take care of this. Dustin swung his sword. A burst of light parted the poisonous gas, drawing a safe path. Hurry up. Natasha hurriedly gathered Mr. Robinson and the rest and ran out. She knew that they'd only be a burden to Dustin if they stayed behind. Kylus, we should run too. Ivy and Maria quickly lifted Kylus and followed Natasha. With the current condition, their best bet was to run away to stay alive. As soon as they walked out of the door, the poisonous gas engulfed the room once more. Several martial artists tried to run away but were swallowed by the gas and began wailing in anguish. Chapter 676. By the time they emerged, those people's skins had begun to rot. Pus oozed from their skin, and blood trickled out of their mouths. They were going to die soon. Go after them. Don't let them get away. Two of the masked killers went after Natasha and the others. However, before they could even get past the door, a flash of light sliced their heads off cleanly. I'm your opponent. Dustin stood in front of the door regally, holding a broken sword. Even the poisonous gas seemed afraid to go near him. Kill him. We need to avenge Grey Gull. With a loud cry, the killers charged toward Dustin. They utilized everything from weapons to poison and curses. None of you will escape today. Dustin humped before joining the fray, starting the bloody battle. Meanwhile, in the gardens, Natasha and everyone else were running in the blizzard. They left trails of footprints on the snowy ground. None of them seemed to have caught up to us. We should be safe now. Ruth was panting after running for so long. Ms. Natasha, Kylus has been severely injured. We need to stop somewhere safe and treat his wounds as soon as possible, Ivy said. Natasha turned and saw Kylus, who was as white as a sheet. He was struggling to keep himself upright. Let's go to the meeting room. Our elite guards are having a meeting there. She immediately decided. Let's go. Just as everyone began to move, a bunch of large, round men emerged from the bushes. They were led by Marlon Cobb. Hello there, darlings. Where are you guys heading? Marlon smirked as he gave the ladies a look over. Marlon, why aren't you helping when someone has infiltrated the place? Natasha yelled. Help. Well, rather than hustling with those people, I'd much rather hustle with you girls. Marlon wore a sickening grin. How dare you? Kylus exploded. Marlon, you better scream, or I'll mess you up. You. Marlon sneered. I might be afraid if you are uninjured, but you can't even save yourself right now. How are you going to fight me? I might be injured, but I can still get rid of you. Kylus snarled. Really? Well, let's see how strong you are now. Marlon suddenly threw a punch. You. Kylus tried to stop the other man, but his movements only aggravated his injuries. He began to vomit blood, then collapsed. I haven't even touched you yet. What a loser. Marlon sneered. You better not play around, Marlon. The invincible guardians won't let you off the hook. Ivy yelled. If I kill all of you, how would others know? Marlon retorted, unfazed by her threat. You wouldn't. Maria glared. But we'll definitely have some fun before killing you guys, Marlon sneered viciously before signaling to his men. What are you guys waiting for? Hurry up, the two chicks from the Invincible Guardians have been waiting for so long. Thanks, Marlon. His subordinates immediately lunged toward Ivy and Maria. Let's give it our all. The two ladies gritted their teeth and faced the men's attacks head-on. However, they were quickly subdued and forced to the ground. Although they were skilled fighters, they weren't able to use their full strength due to their injuries. Eventually, they lost. We're coming, darlings. The men sneered. They yanked at the ladies' clothes. Maria and Ivy shrieked in terror. They had never experienced something like this in their lives. Stop. Kylus roared. He was powerless to do anything. He could only watch those men put the dirty hands on his allies. Chapter 677. Stop. You fucking mongrels. Abigail yelled. She could not stand the sight of Ivy and Maria being assaulted by those beasts any longer. Or, don't rush us, darling. You'll get your turn after we're done with these two. The men grinned sickeningly. Their predatory gazes were glued to Abigail. You're taking things too far. Abigail was furious and unsheathed her dagger. She charged toward the men. The men were taken off guard. They couldn't steer clear of her attacks quickly enough. Her blade left several cuts on them as they jerked backward. How dare you interrupt our fun? We'll fuck you first. The men were pissed. They were about to draw their swords, but Marlon stopped them. Whoa. How can you guys treat a lady like that? He approached Abigail with a small smile. Honey, you should queue up if you want your turn with us. Fuck off, or you're dead. Abigail threatened. Or, don't be like that. I mean no harm. Just hand me that dagger. It's too dangerous for you. Marlon smiled and extended his hand. Fuck off. Abigail swung her arm. The sharp edge of her blade left a gash on Marlon's palm. Marlon's smile hardened, and his face darkened. There's a limit to my patience. You should be grateful for my offer. Abigail, don't be reckless. Mr. Robinson hurried over. He put himself in front of his daughter, smiling apologetically. Sir, my daughter is young and foolish. Please forgive her. Forgive her. Marlon sneered. She cut me just now, so what should we do now? We'll pay. Mr. Robinson withdrew the $20 million check he had gotten from Felix earlier. He carefully handed it over to Marlon. Not too shabby. Marlon accepted the check and stuffed it into his pocket. Since we've already paid for your injuries, could we leave now? Mr. Robinson smiled sheepishly. Leave. Who said anything about leaving? Marlon smirked. Did you think $20 million would it be enough? What do you take me for? Sir, we should take care of this issue peacefully. Let's be forgiving and understanding when necessary. Mr. Robinson lowered his head. I don't mind letting you guys go, but you'll have to please me first. Marlon pointed at his shoe and ordered, my shoe has gotten a little dirty. Kneel and clean it. Hey, you better not go overboard. Abigail snapped. Dying with dignity was much better than enduring humiliation. Being forced to kneel and clean someone's shoe was nothing short of humiliating. I'm not forcing you to clean it. Marlon shrugged. I'll do it. Mr. Robinson nodded repeatedly. Then, he fell to his knees. What are you doing, Dad? Get up. Abigail frowned. It's fine. It'll be over in a second. Mr. Robinson smiled sheepishly. He rolled up his sleeves and began carefully cleaning Marlon's shoe. You. Abigail's blood boiled. She didn't understand how her father could be such a huge coward. PFFT. You sure are a wonderful pet. Marlon smiled and patted Mr. Robinson's head. Sir, your shoe is clean now. Why don't you take a look? Mr. Robinson lifted his head and forced a smile. But he remained where he was. Good job. You can leave now. Marlon nodded with a smile. Thank you, sir. Mr. Robinson beamed and grabbed his daughter's hand. Let's go, Abigail. Chapter 678. Let me go. Abigail flung her father's hand aside angrily. You might be a coward, but I will never bow down to them like you do. She could leave now, but what about Natasha and the others? Was she supposed to abandon her friends and run away? She could never do that. Abigail, as long as you're alive, there's always a chance for you to seek revenge. Mr. Robinson advised. You can leave if you want to, but don't tell me what to do. Abigail snapped coolly. She despised her spineless father. He bowed down to others no matter what. He had never once acted like a man. Others had made fun of her all her life because of his timid actions. Therefore, she'd sworn that no matter what, she would never lose her dignity. Stop being so stubborn, Abigail. Let's go. Mr. Robinson tugged at Abigail anxiously. I told you not to tell me what to do. Scram. Abigail shoved her father, and the man fell to the ground. Marlon grinned at the sight. You should have listened to your father, darling. You wouldn't have been able to escape, but it would have been fun to watch you two try. He never planned to let them escape in the first place. He was merely playing a game of cat and mouse. I knew you were up to no good. Abigail clutched her dagger and tried to stab Marlon. As long as she could defeat that man, they would all be safe. What a fool. Marlon shook his head. Then, he planted his foot into Abigail's chest. Abigail grunted as the force through her backward blood trickled out of the corner of her mouth. For a moment, she was immobile. Since you like using force so much, why don't we start with you? Marlon slowly approached her with a leering grin. He wanted to take her clothes off. Mr. Robinson was instantly alarmed. Falling onto his knees before Marlon, he begged, "Please forgive her, sir. She's just a child. I beg you." He bowed deeply. "Fuck off, you old shit." Annoyed, Marlon kicked Mr. Robinson aside. "Sir." Mr. Robinson clambered back to his knees. "Please let my daughter go. I'll do anything you want. Are you fucking deaf? I told you to piss off." Marlon kicked Mr. Robinson again, harder this time. The older man grunted as he flew backward. Still, he staggered to his feet and lunged toward Marlon. He held the other man's calf, begging, "Please, sir. Please don't hurt my daughter. You're dead meat." Finally losing his temper, Marlon planted a furious kick on Mr. Robinson's back. Mr. Robinson threw up blood that dyed the snow red. However, he refused to let go of Marlon's leg. "Just die already, you old coot." His stubbornness ticked Marlon off, who planted kick after kick on his back. Each kick caused Mr. Robinson to throw up blood. Still, his grip never loosened. "Fuck off." Furious, Marlon aimed his last blow at Mr. Robinson's head. He kicked it like a football. Immediately, Mr. Robinson went flying and crashed into a tree. He was bleeding profusely. Dad. Mr. Robinson. Chapter 679. Abigail, Natasha, and the others were devastated. They knew that the force Marlon used was enough to kill his opponent. Even the strongest martial artist would have died on the spot from that attack. There was no way Mr. Robinson was fine. "That piece of shit dirtied my clothes." Marlon tried to dust the blood off his pants legs, disgusted. "I'll kill you." Abigail howled. She grabbed her dagger and charged toward Marlon. Marlon sneered and grabbed her wrist, effectively pressing her onto the ground. "No one's going to interrupt us now, honey. Let's do it here." Grinning perversely, he tore off her jacket, exposing her voluptuous figure. "Fuck off." Abigail slammed her knee into Marlon's groin with all her might, her eyes bloodshot. "Ah!" Marlon wailed. His face was twisting in pain. "You bitch. How dare you harm me? I'm going to kill you." He pulled out his sword and swung it toward her. The blade was going to slice through her, but a bloody hand appeared from nowhere and grabbed the tip of the blade. Huh. Marlon lifted his head. The person who stopped his attack was Mr. Robinson. However, he seemed like a completely different person. This Mr. Robinson was no longer timid and fearful, instead, he was cold and ruthless. "How are you still alive?" Marlon's expression sobered. "Why did you have to push me?" Mr. Robinson sighed. "Couldn't you have just let this matter slide?" "What the hell are you talking about, old man?" Marlon frowned uneasily. He realized that the air around the older man was slowly shifting. "I've already given you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it, so don't blame me." Mr. Robinson tightened his grip slightly, and Marlon's sword instantly shattered into a million pieces. At the same time, a burst of energy exploded out of him. It rippled through the wind and caused snow to whirl up. Even the plants around them began to sway and shake as if they were marveling at his strength. Mr. Robinson inhaled deeply, and all the joints in his body cracked. He gradually absorbed all the natural essence surrounding him into his body. Soon, he became so powerful that it was hard for others to even look him in the eye. Who are you?" Marlon scrambled backward in terror. He never expected the timid old man to undergo such a drastic change. Now, Mr. Robinson was like a ferocious dragon who had just woken up from his deep slumber. A mere peek at the man was enough to send shivers down one's spine. Marlon had met countless masters in his lifetime, but Mr. Robinson was the scariest person he had ever seen. In fact, Mr. Robinson might even be considered a god at this point, a being who stood higher than any human. You shouldn't have hurt my daughter. Mr. Robinson shook his head. He pointed in Marlon's direction, and without warning, the man's body exploded like a balloon. Marlon died in an instant. Chapter 680. What? Everyone gaped incredulously at the bloody mist that used to be Marlon. Marlon was a divine-level martial artist strong enough to take all of them down effortlessly. However, a finger was all Mr. Robinson needed to kill him. How terrifying. Was this really the cowardly old man they all knew? Run. Once they got over the shock, the group of large men spun around and began to flee. They had no idea what had happened, but they knew Mr. Robinson was far stronger than expected. Marlon had been killed easily, so there was no way they'd stand a chance against that man. You shouldn't have done all that if you were afraid of dying. Mr. Robinson waved his hand casually, and the men immediately burst apart. They turned into a bloody mist. Everyone was shocked by the sight, especially Abigail. Her eyes were wide open. She couldn't believe that her cowardly father had suddenly turned so strong. Wow, he really kept his skills well hidden. Dustin, who had just arrived, gaped at Mr. Robinson. He always thought he had a good eye. However, he never realized such a strong individual had been hiding under his nose this entire time. Mr. Robinson, is that really you? Natasha asked hesitantly, astonished. I apologize for scaring you, Ms. Natasha. Mr. Robinson lowered his head. He quickly returned to how he was earlier. However, no one could look down on him anymore. Dad? How? Abigail was at a loss for words. She couldn't understand why her father would hide his powers and let others walk all over him. I'm sorry for deceiving you all these years. I wanted you to grow up as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Mr. Robinson sighed. He knew how dangerous the martial world was, so he hoped his daughter could stay out of it. Alas, things didn't always go as planned. Who are you? Why are you so strong? And why did you lie to me? Abigail fired questions rapidly. Her head was completely blank at the moment. It's a long story. Mr. Robinson began. Suddenly, a group of people emerged from the snow ahead. It was the rest of the Harmon family. The Harmon family's strongest fighters, which consisted of hundreds of Harmon family elite guards and aides, were being led by Hector. Natasha, Ruth, are you girls all right? Hector asked as he and his group braved the blizzard and trudged toward them. He stared at the bright red snow fearfully. We're fine. We ran into some bastards earlier, but fortunately, Mr. Robinson was around. Natasha forced a smile. Mr. Robinson. Hector was taken aback. He surveyed the mess in dismay. After all, the pieces of flesh littering the ground could only have been caused by using powerful true energy to blast the bodies apart. It would take at least a divine-level martial artist to do that. Mr. Robinson was merely a servant he had ever seen. In fact, Mr. Robinson might even be considered a god at this point, a being who stood higher than any human. You shouldn't have hurt my daughter. Mr. Robinson shook his head. He pointed in Marlon's direction, and without warning, the man's body exploded like a balloon. Marlon died in an instant. Chapter 680. What? Everyone gaped incredulously at the bloody mist that used to be Marlon. Marlon was a divine-level martial artist strong enough to take all of them down effortlessly. However, a finger was all Mr. Robinson needed to kill him. How terrifying. Was this really the cowardly old man they all knew? Run. Once they got over the shock, the group of large men spun around and began to flee. They had no idea what had happened, but they knew Mr. Robinson was far stronger than expected. Marlon had been killed easily, so there was no way they'd stand a chance against that man. You shouldn't have done all that if you were afraid of dying. Mr. Robinson waved his hand casually, and the men immediately burst apart. They turned into a bloody mist. Everyone was shocked by the sight, especially Abigail. Her eyes were wide open. She couldn't believe that her cowardly father had suddenly turned so strong. Wow, he really kept his skills well hidden. Dustin, who had just arrived, gaped at Mr. Robinson. He always thought he had a good eye. However, he never realized such a strong individual had been hiding under his nose this entire time. Mr. Robinson. Is that really you? Natasha asked hesitantly, astonished. I apologize for scaring you, Ms. Natasha. Mr. Robinson lowered his head. He quickly returned to how he was earlier. However, no one could look down on him anymore. Dad, how? Abigail was at a loss for words. She couldn't understand why her father would hide his powers and let others walk all over him. I'm sorry for deceiving you all these years. I wanted you to grow up as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Mr. Robinson sighed. He knew how dangerous the martial world was, so he hoped his daughter could stay out of it. Alas, things didn't always go as planned. Who are you? Why are you so strong? And why did you lie to me? Abigail fired questions rapidly. Her head was completely blank at the moment. It's a long story. Mr. Robinson began. Suddenly, a group of people emerged from the snow ahead. It was the rest of the Harmon family. The Harmon family's strongest fighters, which consisted of hundreds of Harmon family elite guards and aides, were being led by Hector. Natasha, Ruth, are you girls all right? Hector asked as he and his group braved the blizzard and trudged toward them. He stared at the bright red snow fearfully. We're fine. We ran into some bastards earlier, but fortunately, Mr. Robinson was around. Natasha forced a smile. Mr. Robinson. Hector was taken aback. He surveyed the mess in dismay. After all, the pieces of flesh littering the ground could only have been caused by using powerful true energy to blast the bodies apart. It would take at least a divine-level martial artist to do that. Mr. Robinson was merely a servant in us, he would pant after running a few steps. How? Hall. The Dark Lord's disciples broke in. Yukeli told her father.